Thank you. I think it probably was appropriate for me to be in the earlier panel, but Paula knows I'm recovering from pneumonia, and I think she's been kind to allow me to come a little bit later in the day, so bear with me. I'm not contagious anymore. It's true that my work is, in terms of systemic change, as both an attorney and an activist. In other words, most of the cases in which I become involved on behalf of mostly active members involve their concerns in terms of legal quandaries around military sexual trauma, but also what it is about the military legal system that is dysfunctional. So I become involved in court-martial proceedings, Article 32 hearings, and so forth. Most often, my concerns are that there's been this terrible trauma. Most often, it's a woman, and there has been very little redress or accountability. So that's my bias going in. Let me tell you, first of all, what military sexual trauma is defined as in the U.S. Code. It's psychological trauma which, in the judgment of a mental health professional, resulted from a physical assault of a sexual nature, battery of a sexual nature, or sexual harassment which occurred while the veteran or active service member was serving on active duty or active duty for training. Sexual harassment is further defined as repeated unsolicited verbal or physical contact of a sexual nature which is threatening in character. So in other words, all sexual assault is sexual harassment, and some sexual harassment is sexual assault. It is all traumatic. 1 in 5 women, 1 in 100 men in the military report suffering sexual trauma. Some studies put the number even higher. The Army has a 1 in 4 number. Percentages do differ, of course, based on gender, but the numbers, the raw numbers, are about equal, which is interesting. The responses to sexual trauma vary greatly, of course, because people are different. Some of the things that lead to a more debilitating response that I think we don't always understand as well include things like past history, individual vulnerabilities of the victim, nature and extent of the incidents, whether the incident is reported, and what the response is when the report is received. Interestingly, I think we tend to think objectively about sexual trauma. And if it was only a minor assault, she should get over it. And if it was a more serious assault, then we tend to be more compassionate. Really, the determinant factor is what is this person's makeup? What's their background? Do they have a history of trauma? Is this something on top of a lot of other traumas? And are those perceived as vulnerabilities or liabilities? Are we being more harsh rather than more sensitive? The military is not particularly good at seeing individuals in terms of their suffering. I suspect that doesn't surprise people. The military's been doing a lot over the recent past to try to repair some of the problems. But here's the interesting question for me as an activist. The most common reason given for why sexual trauma is not reported is that the victimized soldier fears retaliation, fears harsh judgments, and fears reprisals from the chain of command. What's interesting as well about trauma in general is if there are reports made and the response is respectful, that tends to provide a healing, a better future and a safer path to healing for the victim. In other words, all it takes, when you think about what sexual trauma is, all it takes for most victims is to be believed and to be respected. And you can't get that if you don't report. And you can't report if you believe the response is going to be harmful. So that's really the sort of the cycle we're stuck in, I think. The military does have protocol and procedures in place for internal redress of sexual assault complaints, but again, they're perceived as largely ineffective, if not likely to be harmful. And in my opinion as a systems person is that this is because there's almost no oversight or accountability that I could describe as independent. I realize you can't, because of the unique nature of the military, can't expect outside oversight in the way that I might design it, but independent oversight is sorely lacking. Are you? Okay, oh geez. So here are a couple of things. Here are a couple of things to know. First and foremost, some of the protective laws in the real world just don't apply in the military. And I think we should be asking whether we need to be designing a process within the military that could provide this kind of oversight. For example, Title IX, which protects against sexual harassment and assault in education. No such thing exists in the military, but it exists for schools and education. It doesn't even exist in military academies. Title VII, which applies the same rules to employment. No such thing in the military. And we're talking about a highly gendered, in terms of disparity in power, highly gendered environment. Shouldn't there be an extra thumb on the scale, some version of Title IX or Title VII in place in the military, so that there is an institutionalized mechanism for redress that is uniquely designed to deal with what is truly a systemic and debilitating problem. As a legal activist, this is my hope, that the mere existence of such a system, of such a rule, of a process, if you will, would help prevent sexual trauma by making it clear that sexual violence not only undermines good order, discipline, and combat readiness, it interferes with the fundamental civil rights of soldiers, especially women, to serve their country free from violations of personal autonomy, bodily integrity, and human dignity. Thank you.